like I said, I don't know if anybody out there, I'm pretty sure they have. If you've ever taped Saturday mornings during the 80s, you better pray and hope your tape's still in good condition. Because I'll tell you this, that is the only way you're going to get your Saturday mornings back to the way they were. But that, again, like I said, folks, is why people look back at Saturday mornings in the 80s with such fondness. Why they look back at it more than what people who are grandparents now, if you will, look back at Saturday mornings during the 70s and 60s. This is why people like me that grew up in the 80s, we look back at it with such fondness. Because it was a Renaissance era. It was a golden era of Saturday mornings. It was a golden era. It was a golden era. It was a Renaissance era. It was basically, it solidified what Saturday mornings were meant to be. Because you basically had, as I was mentioning at the end of the second part, you had basically shows specifically made to air on Saturday mornings. You didn't have what you have now, which is a whole variety of shows, which shows that you mainly see on which shows that air on Saturday mornings, but you see throughout the entire week anyway, and that you could easily put on demand right now. And you know, that's one thing I do hope happens someday. I hope somebody comes up with an idea to do an 80s cartoon on demand channel, because that will be definitely watched a lot. People, you will definitely see people. You definitely see people, if you will. You will see people getting these remotes, clicking on the on-demand section, going to that 80s channel, and watching those 80s cartoons like they did back in the day. That's what they would do. You know, and if and the reason I talk about this is because you have kids nowadays that they wonder why we look at, why people my age, why people my sister's age, my cousin's age, my friends' ages, why we look back at Saturday mornings with such fondness during the 80s. It's because that was a defining era. That's what made us who we are. That's what made us long for what we want. That's what made us learn about patience. Because if we had the patience to go to school, or even the patience during the summer to have to wait and wait and wait until Saturday mornings came around, it was worth it. Because like I said, the weekdays, they gave us a great variety, but they only gave us about 2 to 3 hours worth. Saturday mornings gave us an entire morning's worth. Now true, there were times during the fall that Saturday mornings would get preempted. That still happens today. Well, not as much today, but you know, they would get preempted. But at times when they would get preempted, you wouldn't have to worry because you would have another network. You could just switch over. Let's say ABC, you know, they got college football and everything, right? Let's say if ABC had to preempt back in the 80s for college football, you wouldn't have to worry. Because even if CBS had to preempt, if you will, for college football, you would have NBC. Now, I know you're thinking, well, wait a minute, Brian. There's a problem. What if all 3 networks had to preempt? Well, if all 3 networks had to preempt, that was fine. But it would all depend on when they preempted. And then that's, of course, when syndication came into play. Because even syndication had some specific shows that were made to air on Saturdays only. So at least you had that. But a majority of the time, Saturday mornings was your time. It taught you about patience. Because like I said, if you can go to school or even wait during your summer vacation just to watch those shows, there you go. I mean, I'll tell you this. I remember when I was a kid, growing up, we would go to Lake Comanche here in California. And we would be there with all other family and relatives for about a couple of days. And one of the things me and the other kids would do, me and my sisters and some of the other kids would do, we'd wake up, we only had one TV, which was kind of ironic which was not uncommon at that time. But we had one TV. And I remember we would go, wake up in the morning, probably have a little bit of breakfast, or take that breakfast, if we could, and we would go watch Saturday morning cartoons in the living area. It was a small living area. It was basically about this size, if you will. Like here was the TV, here was the pull-out bed, something like that. Pull back, get more room. You kind of get the idea. But we would watch Saturday morning cartoons. That's how much we loved them. I mean, when they started bringing out during the late 80s and all that, they started to, because one of the, whoa, hold on for a second, I got so caught up in this. I'm sorry, folks. I got so caught up, I forgot to stop the recording because I was recording, like I said, that 80s thing. But like I said, you know, back, one of the things they talked about on this show, because I was just thinking about it, that's why I had to go stop it. One of the things they talked about is the evolution of technology. And back then, in the late 80s and all that, mid to late 80s, you started to see the beginnings of all this different kind of technology. And one of them that they didn't talk about, but was obviously coming around, was the portable TV. It was a TV with an antenna that you could take with you and you could watch television. You could. You could watch it. You could take it with you and watch television. Let's say you're driving and all that, you just bring it out, you can watch television. Even if it was black and white, you watched it. And that's what a lot of kids did if they could afford that thing back in the day. You could actually watch television on a portable TV. You could watch Saturday morning cartoons. Let's say you're going on a trip to Disneyland on a Saturday morning, but you don't want to miss your favorite cartoons. There you go. And that's the impact Saturday morning cartoons had with us in the 80s. That we were willing to watch what we wanted to watch. Watch when we could. And that's what made it so special at that time. It made it so special. And that's why I hope and pray for anybody that has basically tapes, VHS tapes of Saturday morning cartoons with them. I hope and pray you still have them in good condition. Well, in semi-good condition, because that's the only way you'll be able to watch them. I mean, to hear that a company like, say, Warner Brothers here, and other companies are starting to do stuff like this, bring out 2 discs or 3 discs worth of what they call the Saturday morning sets, but with only their shows that air on Saturday mornings, that's good enough, but still, you could give more. And that's why I feel a company like, say, Mill Creek would probably be the best option to do that. But again, this is why when a lot of the young generation today, the new generation looks at us and wonders why, you know, we're not so impressed with what you have on Saturday mornings now. Mostly because you have the on-demand and everything, but the reason we're not so impressed is because, like I said, what you have on Saturday mornings you mainly see during the weekdays anyway. But the reason we're not impressed is because, hold on for a second. Just wondering, I guess I didn't shut the garage door, entrance to the garage door better because the cat just went in there. But anyway, like I said, this is why, you know, when young generations ask us why you look at Saturday morning, when they ask us why you look at Saturday mornings back when you were a kid with such fondness, is because those were shows that specifically you got to watch on Saturday mornings. And even if you had a show on Saturday mornings that you could see on the weekdays back then, mainly what you saw on the weekdays were repeats at times. Saturday mornings were specifically made for new episodes only. And that's what fans loved about it. That's what they loved about it, and that's what they still love about it. Love it. That's what they loved about it, and that's what they loved about it then and now. I mean, if a lot of these networks cable networks could go back to that and say, you know what? We need to start airing specifically newer episodes on our blocks instead of just the repeats. They would have more viewers. But here's the thing. The days of Saturday mornings, I still believe another renaissance is coming. In closing, let me say this. I still believe another renaissance, another golden age of Saturday morning cartoons is coming. I feel it. And even if it's through syndication with things like MeTV or Cabellion or whatever you want to call it, or Antenna TV, something's coming, and it's going to come with a bang. It's going to come with a bang, and it's going to be just like the 1980s for Saturday mornings all over again. And then, and only then, do I believe young kids, this generation now, will respect and understand why we look at these shows with such fondness. And if that does not happen, which I believe it will someday, all you have to do is, if you, like I said, and this is why I say, if you have a VHS worth of Saturday morning cartoons back from the 80s, do yourself a favor, convert it to DVD. Whether you have a recorder, whether you have to go to Walmart or wherever to get it converted, convert it to DVD, show it to your young nephews or kids, this young generation. Show it to your young children, to your children or your nephews and all that, your nieces. Let them see why these were so good to us. Or go out and get these 2 volumes and show them why the 80s, Saturday morning cartoons of the 80s, why we look back at it with such fondness and such nostalgia. Because that was our decade. It taught us about patience. And we learned a lot. But also, it was our time. It was our time. You didn't have, again, you don't have what you have now then. Because nowadays, if you're a kid and you're thinking, I don't want to watch this thing on the news, I'm just going to switch to Nicktoons. You didn't have that back then. You had to be patient. And that's what this taught us. So to me, that is why I feel and believe another Renaissance era, another golden age, if you will, of Saturday morning cartoons is coming. But only, I'll say this, but only God himself knows when that's going to happen. Only God himself can supplant or implant that idea into someone's head down the line and say, you know what, there's still something out there. And have that person someday say, you know what, there's still a market for Saturday morning cartoons as they were in the 80s. Let's do that. Let's try to go back in that direction. And it's going to happen, folks. I feel it's going to happen. And this is why we look back at it with such fondness. Heck, this is why kids, like say my 17, almost 18-year-old nephew, and my near 21-year-old niece, respect what we talk about when we talk about the Saturday morning cartoons of the 80s. Because they grew up at a time when Boomerang, when things like Cartoon Network first came around, they were able to actually sit down and watch those same cartoons and get an understanding of why we had such fondness for it. So, that's all I'm going to say. I hope you enjoyed this 3-parter. Sorry it was this long. I only got a 15-minute time limit on this channel. Hope you enjoyed it. Comment below. But take it to heart. I truly believe another era and age is coming. I just don't know when and where. But this is why Saturday mornings of the 1980s is looked back at with such fondness. Because of what we had.